Not agree with it. I mean, the salary, absolutely. The starting the season earlier where you conflict with March Madness, that's nonsensical to me. Again, make some sense to try to get your league away from the college football and the NFL for the sake of ratings. I get that.
That reaction right there tells you everything you need to know about where these CBA negotiations are heading. The WNBA just put a massive offer on the table. We're talking quadruple salary increases for some players, and it got rejected before the ink was even dry. So what's actually happening behind closed doors that could lead to the league's first work stoppage?
It is quick, fast, and in a hurry. It was the housing situation. Now I'm trying to figure out, somebody earlier said, well, of course they're not going to take this because they're going from 60,000 to just 225,000. So they're not going to agree to the housing part. And I'm like, you getting let me do math, $150,000 a year raise. You can't find something for $3,000 to rent.
Here's what the league proposed in their latest offer. Minimum salary jumps from $60,000 to $225,000. That's a $165,000 raise for rookies and bench players. Average salary hits $500,000, up from $220,000 in the previous proposal. Max contracts reach $1 million guaranteed, with potential earnings over $1.2 million through revenue sharing. On paper, this looks like exactly what players have been demanding for years. But the Players Association took one look at this proposal and said no, not maybe, not let's negotiate further, just a flat rejection. And it wasn't because of the money itself.
Okay. As negotiations continue between the WNBA and WNBA PA, on a new CBA Sports Business Journal reported the Players Association plans to reject the league's latest offer. Guys, are we headed towards a lockout? Because they're daring billionaires.
Then there's the housing situation, and this is where egos entered the equation. The league's latest proposal eliminates team-provided housing entirely. Right now, teams provide housing for players during the regular season and postseason. If a player chooses not to use team housing, they get a monthly stipend instead. Under the new proposal, that all disappears. Now let's be rational about this for a second. You're getting a minimum salary of $225,000. Finding suitable housing for 3 to 4 months shouldn't be a financial impossibility. We're not talking about players making $30,000 a year anymore. At that salary level, you can absolutely afford a decent apartment or short-term rental in any WNBA city. But here's what's really happening. It's not about whether players can afford housing, it's about what eliminating that benefit represents. For years, players have pointed to things like shared housing and lack of amenities as symbols of how the league undervalued them. Taking away housing while simultaneously claiming you're offering historic salary increases sends a mixed message about whether the league truly respects its players or just wants good PR.
We heard one of the owners literally come out and say, yeah, Kathy Engelbert should probably be let go. But because they handled this situation the way they did, I don't think we're going to do it, or I don't want to do it now. They didn't like how that went down. According to the report, it is partially due to, quote, vague pay scale projections. The WNBPA reportedly has concerns about the league.
There is one legitimate concern about the housing elimination that deserves consideration. Players on temporary contracts, the ones signed to 10-day deals or short-term injury replacements, are in a different situation. These players might be with a team for less than 2 weeks. They're making significantly less than players on standard contracts. Expecting them to find and secure housing for such a brief period, often with little notice, creates a real logistical and financial burden. The league could easily address this by maintaining housing provisions for temporary contract players while eliminating it for players on standard deals. But that nuance doesn't appear to be part of the current proposal, which suggests the league didn't think through the practical implications of this change.
Quote math. The WNBA has proposed an average salary of $500,000. But with a proposed salary cap of $5 million per team and 12 players, the numbers do not add up. the salary cap would reportedly increase over the length of the CBA and be directly tied to the league's revenue growth each year. Specific revenue sharing details haven't been disclosed. USA Today reached out to the WNBA for a comment. The league's latest offer to the Players Association includes a max base salary of $1 million guaranteed with the option.
Now we need to talk about the schedule changes, because this is where the proposal gets genuinely problematic. The league wants to start the season earlier, potentially as early as April 1st, which is technically allowed under the current CBA. Training camp would open 30 days before that. The stated goal is to reduce competition with NFL and college football for viewership in the late summer and fall. That logic makes sense on the surface. The WNBA has struggled with ratings when competing against football. Moving the season earlier could give the league more exclusive attention from sports fans. But there's a massive flaw in this strategy that reveals how little the league understands its own product.
The WNBA's offer raises the minimum player salary to $225,000 and the average salary to $500,000, up from $220,000 and $460,000, respectively, in the WNBA's previous proposal on November 18th. League is also reporting the latest offer no longer includes team.
Starting the WNBA season in early April means directly conflicting with March Madness. The NCAA women's basketball tournament runs through early April, with the championship game typically in the first week of the month. This tournament generates massive ratings. The 2024 championship, featuring Caitlin Clark, drew nearly 19 million viewers. It's the single biggest platform for women's basketball in the country. March Madness is essentially free marketing for the WNBA. College players build their brands, develop their fan bases, and create storylines that carry directly into the professional league. Caitlin Clark didn't become the biggest draw in WNBA history by accident. She became that draw because tens of millions of people watched her dominate college basketball for 4 years. The tournament is where casual fans discover the next generation of WNBA stars. Deliberately scheduling WNBA games to compete with that tournament doesn't just fail to solve the football problem, it creates an entirely new problem by undermining the league's most effective talent development and marketing pipeline. You're asking fans to choose between watching established college stars in high-stakes tournament games versus watching regular season WNBA games in April. That's not a winning proposition.
Currently provide housing for players on the roster during the regular season and postseason. Come on, USA Today, write better articles than this. Should a player choose not to stay in the team's provided housing, they receive a monthly stipend. A change to the housing requirement would also impact players on temporary or short-term contracts who are with the team for a minimal period of time. The league also proposed increasing the length of the season, which would include an earlier start date. If the date is moved up, it could interfere with the end of women's college basketball.
The schedule manipulation also targets the league's new competitors, specifically Unrivaled and Project B, the alternative leagues launching in the off-season. By starting earlier and potentially extending the season, the WNBA would eliminate the winter window these leagues are using. It's a defensive move designed to prevent players from having options beyond the WNBA. Here's where this gets interesting strategically. Unrivaled is probably doomed regardless of what the WNBA does. Project B, backed by more substantial funding and offering higher salaries, poses a legitimate threat. The WNBA wants to crush these competitors before they can establish themselves. That's understandable from a business perspective. You don't want rival leagues poaching your talent. But using schedule changes as a competitive weapon has consequences. Players value the ability to earn additional income in the off-season. Many have built relationships with international teams or are intrigued by these new domestic options. Forcing players to choose between the WNBA and all other basketball opportunities creates resentment, especially when combined with proposals that eliminate benefits like housing. The broader issue is that the league is making unilateral decisions about player schedules without adequately compensating them for the loss of off-season earning opportunities. If you want players to commit to a longer WNBA season that prevents them from playing elsewhere, you need to make up that lost income. The current salary proposals, while substantial increases, may not fully offset what top players can earn by playing year-round in multiple leagues. There's also the matter of player health and longevity. Basketball is physically demanding. Playing year-round without adequate rest leads to injuries and shortened careers. Many players have advocated for a true off-season where they can recover physically and mentally. The WNBA's schedule expansion, while potentially beneficial for the league, works against player wellness. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the possibility of a work stoppage. The current CBA doesn't expire until October 2025, but these negotiations are happening now because both sides want certainty before the season starts. If they can't reach an agreement, we're looking at either a lockout initiated by owners or a strike initiated by players. Lockouts happen when owners refuse to let players work under the old agreement, typically because they want to force acceptance of new terms. Strikes happen when players refuse to play, using their labor as leverage. Either scenario would be catastrophic for a league that just experienced its most successful season in history, thanks to the Caitlin Clark effect. The WNBA has never had a work stoppage in its 28-year history, but we're in unprecedented territory now. The league is more valuable than ever, with expansion fees reaching $50 million and new media deals on the horizon. Players know this is their moment to secure long-term financial stability. Owners, many of whom are billionaires who've never turned a profit on their WNBA investments, are tired of losing money and want a deal that actually works economically. This creates a dangerous dynamic. Players feel emboldened by the league's recent success and believe they deserve a larger share of growing revenues. Owners feel like they've been subsidizing the league for decades and want players to accept that profitability has to come before massive salary increases. Neither side is entirely wrong, which makes compromise difficult. One owner reportedly said publicly that Sue Bird should probably be let go from her front office position, but because of how the players handled certain situations, they're not going to do it now. That quote reveals the ego and pride involved in these negotiations. Billionaires don't like being pushed around. They don't like public pressure campaigns. When players or the Players Association applies pressure through media or fan activism, it can backfire by making owners dig in their heels out of spite. The math problem in the salary proposal isn't just an accounting error. It's a symptom of deeper issues in how these negotiations are being conducted. The league appears to be throwing out impressive-sounding numbers without having a coherent plan for how those numbers work within the salary cap structure. That suggests either incompetence in the negotiation process or deliberate obfuscation designed to confuse players and create good headlines without substance. Revenue-sharing details haven't been disclosed, which is another massive red flag. Players want to know exactly what percentage of league revenues they'll receive. The NBA players get approximately 50% of basketball-related income. The WNBA has never disclosed its revenue-sharing formula publicly, and the vagueness in this proposal suggests the league wants to maintain maximum flexibility rather than committing to a transparent, verifiable system. Here's what makes this particularly precarious. The WNBA just had its best year ever. Attendance records were shattered. Ratings reached heights nobody predicted. Merchandise sales exploded. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese and other rookies brought unprecedented attention to the league. This should be a moment of celebration and momentum. Instead, we're heading toward a potential work stoppage that could destroy all that goodwill. Casual fans who just started paying attention to the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark aren't going to stick around through a lockout or strike. They'll move on to other sports and entertainment options. The league has a narrow window to capitalize on this moment, and a work stoppage would slam that window shut. The Players Association is playing a dangerous game by rejecting this offer so quickly. Yes, there are legitimate problems with the proposal. The math doesn't work. The housing elimination is poorly thought out. The schedule changes create new problems. But outright rejection without counter-proposals or continued negotiation signals that players are willing to let this go to a work stoppage. That's a massive gamble. On the other hand, the league's proposal reveals a lack of seriousness about these negotiations. If you're going to offer historic salary increases, you need to make sure the math actually works. If you're going to eliminate benefits, you need to explain why and what players get in return. If you're going to change the schedule, you need to consider the implications for player health, off-season earnings, and the league's relationship with college basketball. So where does this go from here? The current CBA expires in October 20. We're 10 months away from that deadline. In typical labor negotiations, both sides would spend the next several months making offers and counter-offers, slowly moving toward a compromise. But the quick rejection of this proposal suggests the gap between what players want and what owners are willing to offer remains enormous. The league needs to go back to the drawing board and present a proposal with internally consistent numbers, clear revenue-sharing formulas, and thoughtful consideration of how schedule changes affect players. The Players Association needs to present specific counter-proposals rather than just rejecting offers. Both sides need to recognize that a work stoppage would be mutually destructive. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes labor negotiations fail. Sometimes the gap is too wide to bridge. Sometimes egos and pride prevent rational compromise. And sometimes a work stoppage is the only way to reset the relationship, and force both sides to make real concessions. If the WNBA goes into a lockout or players go on strike, it won't just affect it will fundamentally damage the league's relationship with fans, media partners, and sponsors. It will waste the momentum from Caitlin Clark's rookie year. It will give alternative leagues like Project B an opportunity to position themselves as the real future of women's professional basketball. The stakes couldn't be higher. So here's the question you need to answer. Are the players right to reject this proposal despite the massive salary increases? Or are they overplaying their hand and risking everything the league has built? Because somebody's going to have to blink first. And right now, neither side looks ready to compromise. Drop your take in the comments, and if you want to see how this situation develops, hit subscribe because this story is just getting started.